new ones last week.
Cool.
I think. There were like 2 groups I made, and I just walked around with Kai.
We got it working. It was a restart.
Yeah, that worked.
That worked?
Yep.
Classics diagram.
Yeah, no, I have a TV at home, and when I connect
Damn,
it,
my boy, you even got it. You made a PowerPoint for this shit?
Yeah.
no, you did. It's a really nice PowerPoint too.
Bro, way to pop off, dude. I'm so excited.
I really, really do appreciate it.
Will you share this PowerPoint with?
Yeah, totally. I'm live streaming it right now, so like I'll share the video with you guys.
Mic with you?
No, this came from right there.
Yeah, please do share that link with us. I'll put it in the Discord so that everybody can see this after as well.
This is what happens when you graduate and you don't know down here.
Yeah, for real.
Can you please tell me that? Because I'm like...
Check.
I need that.
Check.
I figured.
Well, seems like the microphone doesn't work, but who cares?
It's less stressful. I'm sitting right here.
Ways that
Anyone else?
In the front row seats to DJ Ethanol. I have no. Do you do gigs and stuff?
Yeah.
Where do you do gigs at?
I played Hopscotch Festival last year, one of the official day parties. That was pretty cool. And
I was gonna say I'd love to come to like something.
hell yeah. I haven't been getting booked that much recently, but like,
Why not?
I don't know. But like,
You know, how comfortable you feel doing events in general?
pretty good. Like, probably like 70 out of 100, maybe.
Okay, because I'm trying to get a list of DJs that I can call on whenever, like, I'm currently about to take over a residency over at the Avenue off of Glenwood and
cool.
Hillsborough.
Awesome.
So I'd love to have you on that list if I was like, hey, I can't run this.
Oh yeah, that'd be dope. I mean, if it's like house music, I can totally do
It's
that.
open format.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
it would be like background house, indie dance, like super easy.
Cool.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Is everybody
Great,
here?
bro.
No, we're waiting on Tyler.
Oh, he left.
Borrow a turntable from the library. Are you live right now? Or?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. Though. Like,
I can lend you one.
no.
Yeah.
I love the international. Is there a list? I hate that little shake on my Spotify 5-second crossplay. I put next dead mouse and they transition their song.
Yeah.
All of them sound stupid, but it's fun.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. But when you rock it, bro, that's a feeling that like just does not at least for me, I don't get it that feeling anywhere else. It's great.
I'm gonna do a boil room set.
Hell yeah, bro. Be the next Jason Status.
They are actually already. I'm already looking to do a boil room set in like tomorrow actually.
Oh, dude, you should honestly be on a plane right now. All right.
They did boiler room in Durham.
Oh shit.
They did boiler room in Durham.
Yeah. They had
Okay.
a boiler room came to Durham.
Okay, cool. So that was I had the dumbest ass question there, which was, is boiler room like a place or is boiler room like an organization?
I think it's an organization.
Or is it like is it one static venue?
I don't think so.
There is a static.
But do they also like travel and they set up in venues and call it boiler room and like?
I think so.
I think boiler room just when the lights are red and the
Did you
It's just crazy
Could you
random.
tell me the history behind the name DJ Ethanol?
Sure. We'll definitely get to that and all of your other questions.
Baked into the
Thanks, everybody. All right, guys.
Tyler, you have no idea. I'm so excited. I'm about to be using my Ableton Push.
Hell yeah. Thanks, everybody.
The one that I have no idea how to use.
It's basically just like if all the buttons in the Ableton effect chain were just brought onto a physical thing. That's all a
I'm
button.
just going to be following along.
Cool.
I can do like the DJ Khaled where he's like, is this fire? And it's like not even turned on. That's the other one.
Wait, who was that?
DJ Khaled, he posted on his Instagram story, it's like some drum tech shit on, it's like intending to hit and shit like that. It was just the beat playing in the background. Yeah. Or if you had it, yeah.
Oh my god.
You're
Yeah.
trying to play guitar. Ooh, that's shit.
All right.
Okay.
Everybody ready?
Go ahead and get started.
Play guitar.
Hang on.
Before we get started though, guys, I did get a text from Aaron recently saying that the DAW labs, like people were complaining about stuff being like unplugged and just kind of like left a little bit messy and stuff. And that he kind of wants to maybe change the access policy a bit next semester. If it keeps going that way, I don't want him to do that at all, but like, he pretty much just told me to tell y'all that like, yo, like just make sure that stuff's like plugged in after you're done with it. Just make sure it like looks clean and stuff, and like, y'all will be good after that. But yeah, if you've unplugged something, just remember to plug it back in and we should be good. Outside of that, DJ Ethanol, I'm really excited.
Thanks for having me here today, Manas. So I'm going to be talking about Serum sound design. First, a little bit about me. My first exposure to music production was in middle school when we had this thing called Digital Music Club. That's me standing behind the teacher's elbow, kind of looking off into the middle distance. But regretfully, I didn't continue my hobby until I was much older. In 2019, I had previously been a student at NC State, but I dropped out. And having a lot of free time on your hands, I needed to find a creative outlet and do something productive with my time. So I started DJing, and that just felt kind of fake because it wasn't my music. So shortly after, I started producing. And this is my first gig, I guess you could say. My friends and I helped put together a rave in a barn that one of our friends owned, and that was on my 21st birthday, so that was pretty fun. Since then, I've gotten to play at some really cool events around the area. This is at a venue in Durham called the Pinhook. The one in the middle on the bottom is kind of like a sort of secret festival thing that somebody threw for their 30th birthday party, and I got booked for it. The lower left there is at the House of Art in downtown Raleigh. Top left is at the official Hopscotch Day Party at Junction West last year in 2022. This one in the middle is an event that I actually threw myself with some friends. It was at a beach on, what's that lake called? Falls Lake. And it was a pretty fun community event. Everybody, danced on the beach, had a great time. And then this is a video of me playing one of my songs at a New Year's Eve show last year. And the organizer requested that I play this song, so it was really cool to get this crowd reaction. Anyway, so I came back to NC State in 2021 and finished my chemical engineering degree in May of this year. This is my girlfriend. She's a farmer, and this is us on the farm. And these are my two cats, and this is what I do in real life. I'm a molecular biologist. I work for a lab here on campus studying plastic biodegradation. And just a little bit more about the name. I know a lot of people asked about it. This here is the chemical formula for ethanol. It's produced by microorganisms in order to regenerate their NAD+ so that they can get energy from the citric acid cycle, but it is also consequently consumed by humans as the most common party drug in the world. So I thought that was kind of a funny double entendre with my name also being Ethan. And you can stream me on any platform you want. I focus on Spotify, Bandcamp, and SoundCloud, though, because those are probably the most active. And I'm really close to 100 SoundCloud followers, so with y'all's help, maybe I could get there. Anyway, let's talk about Serum. It's an FM wavetable synthesizer, and this here is what the interface looks like. Here's the signal chain through Serum. So the information travels from the modulator to the carrier, to the effects section, to the filter that you can see there on the upper right, and then finally that's controlled by the master volume knob. But what do these words FM, modulator, and carrier even mean? Well, FM stands for frequency modulation, and it's a technique in which a carrier wave is convolved by a modulator wave, and in this case, if that sine wave is the carrier and this is the modulator, that's the resulting wave that it forms. And that's basically all that dubstep and bass music in general are, is just FM patches. And there are a couple common different FM synthesizers. There's Serum, which we're going to focus on today. That's $189, but you can pay $10 a month through Splice, and you just get it immediately, and then once it's done, they just give you the key, and there's no like interest or anything, and that's what I did. I think it's a pretty good deal. And then there's Vital, which is very similar to Serum, and it's free, but you have to give them your email, so you know they're probably going to sell your data. Or you could buy the upgraded version of Vital that has like extra wavetables and stuff, but we'll see later that doesn't really matter all that much. Then there's also Wavetable, which is like Ableton Live Suite's kind of default version of Serum and Vital. And then there's also Operator, which is included with Ableton Live, but it is not a wavetable synthesizer like the other ones, although it is still FM. And up here is the Yamaha DX7. That's probably the most famous FM synthesizer other than Serum. And just to compare the price of this with these, one of these will run you $700 to $1,000. So I think I'm going to stick with Serum. This is what the effects section of Serum looks like. I have the arrow going into the top there and coming out the bottom because it's processed from top to bottom. That is the order in which the signal is processed through the effects. And then finally it's sent to the filter section that we saw on the main page. What's interesting about the effects section is that each one of them has a dry-wet knob on it. So you could actually have a situation like this, where you're getting some of the dry signal being sent to the filter, as well as some of the wet signal being sent to the filter through the effects. So after the effects section comes the filter section. I have a high-pass filter with 24 decibel per octave slope. That's what that high 24 means right there. And I have it applied to both oscillator A and B right now. And commonly, you're going to want to modulate the filter and effects parameters either with an LFO or a Serum macro like we have in this case. And there's like 100 different types of filter in Serum. So there's a ton of different options that you have. Some of them are just normal filters. Others of them are like flangers and comb filters and stuff like that that add crazy harmonics. But there's a lot of different options and no one filter to rule them all or anything like that. And then over here we have the sub-bass oscillator, which if you'll notice this direct out thing is highlighted. That means it'll bypass both the FX and the filter section. So even if this little sub-bass thing right here was checked, this would still bypass the filter if the direct out was turned on. So now putting together this example that we've been talking about, we have the modulator, which in this case is on oscillator B, combining with oscillator A to get the output, which is shown there. That is then sent to the effects, which is sent to the filter, and we have both the sub-bass and the output from our filter being controlled by the master volume. But let's say we turn down the dry-wet on the effects section, then we also have the dry oscillator A output being sent to the filter. We can vary this even more by turning up the level of our modulator, and then that's going to send both the modulator and the modulated carrier to the FX section, and also send some dry signal from both of them to the output. And if you'll see here, I have oscillator B unchecked on this filter, so that means some of this dry modulator signal is going to go straight to the master output. And there are really like endless combinations of what you can do here. While I was practicing for this, I made 3 or 4 different patches with these waves, and they all sound vastly different. So, yes?
So just a couple of questions. Firstly, could you just talk about what a wavetable is real quick, and then after that, would you mind explaining why it's called a modulator and a carrier?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm actually going to switch over to Ableton now so I can just show you on Serum. A wavetable is like a...
Your screen.
Oh. There we go. So a wavetable is essentially a two-dimensional way of looking at the time of a wave. So, you know, you have the time going across this way, but when you put it in a 3D view like this by just clicking on it, you also kind of have time represented on this axis as well, and you can see that when we change the wavetable position, you can have that set to either an envelope or an LFO. So it's really just a bunch of different waves that are contained within the same data file, but there are different ways that you can conceptualize it, if that helps. So this is the patch that we were just looking at on the PowerPoint. And like I said, this sounds pretty much different every time you make it. So here's one that we made. And I said we were going to focus on Serum, but I wanted to try the same patch in Vital. It doesn't really sound quite as good in my opinion, and but the only real difference I found between Serum and Vital is that Vital puts its filter before the effects instead of after it like Serum does. So I'm going to show you guys how to make a sound like this. I have my Ableton default set up to include a Serum VST and a utility and a limiter every time I add a new MIDI track. I think that really helps me to speed up my workflow. So to get that one that we looked at in the PowerPoint, I'm going to put this one on a basic sine wave, and then I'll have this one be analog BD sine. If you'll notice, these are actually opposite of each other. So if we mess with the settings in a certain way and play them together, they won't make any sound at all. But if we turn on the sync for this BD sine and turn that up, we'll see that the wavelength gets much shorter. And what we can...
How'd you do that again? The sync wave?
Yeah, so clicking on this little thing right here brings up all the warp options, as they're called in Serum. You see FM in here. There's a bunch of other ways to change the wavetable also. And you see that, you know, the wavelength is shorter, so we'll get a higher frequency sound out of that. There we go. If we compare that to the same pitch with just the sine wave, yeah. So now here's really the bread and butter of what this type of sound is all about. I'm going to go on oscillator A and click on this little box right here, the same one that I brought up the sync window, and select FM from B. And then I'm just going to turn that up to probably about half, and then we'll see what that sounds like. It helps to be, you know, in the octave that you want to be in. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to tell what the sound is going to end up sounding like. So now I'm going to turn on the filter, and we had it was a high 24. There it is. And I think in that example, I probably had an LFO modulating the cutoff here. So one of the greatest things about Serum is that you can map the envelopes and LFOs and these macro knobs right here to pretty much any parameter you want. And the way that you get that kind of like classic wub sound is to map it to the cutoff like this. Obviously that sounds pretty shitty, and we're going to change that very shortly. So the first thing that I usually do is I'll turn on the sub oscillator and turn on that direct out and bring up the cutoff of the filter to where I am pretty confident that it's not interacting with the sub oscillator. And now we'll start adding some effects on it. Hyper dimension is pretty cool. Actually, before I talk in depth about these effects, how familiar is everyone with Serum?
Like, kind of. I would say, like, the reason I kind of even wanted to, like, ask you to do this is because, like, a lot of us have the plugin, like Omkar and myself, for instance, and, like, well, we're familiar with, like, you know, like, where everything is, kind of, but, like, we don't really know how to, like, get the ideas in our heads of, like, sounds, like, into Serum, if that makes sense.
I see.
So, yeah.
I also saw that Alex, did you have a question?
No, you said who's familiar with it?
Oh, you're familiar with Serum?
Well, like, I know what Serum is, but not like I use it like you can use it.
Oh, okay, cool. So the hyper dimension thing, this is actually two different effects in one. The hyper kind of adds stereo imaged extra versions of the oscillators, whereas the dimension is a little different in that it kind of adds like a subtle reverb. It can be kind of hard to hear unless it's too much sometimes. Like you can kind of hear it's in like a space now. I feel like dimension is usually better for like stereo image issues, but if you're not really worried about that, the hyper can also sound really good. It's kind of like more stereo now.
So what do you mean when you say stereo image?
So when I know just enough here to be dangerous. The way I understand it is that when waves play at slightly different times or the same frequency but in opposite amplitude and are out in the stereo space, they cancel each other out when they're summed to mono. And that, yeah, it's called phase cancellation or phasing sometimes, and it can sound pretty good depending on what you're going for. But it can also sound really messy and like muddy. And if you have things that are hard panned left and right and you sum them to mono, the signal will disappear completely.
And then that's what you were saying earlier, like it would just cut out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a perfect example. Those two sine waves earlier were 180 degrees out of phase. The phaser is really awesome, and I know we were just talking about phase, but we're actually not going to use this for its intended purpose. If you turn the rate all the way down to 0 and the depth, which is like how many milliseconds of delay it adds, down to 0, you can change this frequency knob and bring out like a certain harmonic or a characteristic that you want to accentuate. And usually I like to like map that to the LFO or something. And this is kind of how you get that like that yoy sound that you hear in dubstep sometimes. And then obviously, you know, we got the compressor. If we turn on multi-band mode, it's yep, exactly. Mm-hmm. And if you press this little drop-down arrow, you can pick like different presets for each one of these. Yep. And then usually I'll like bring the threshold so it's like louder. Even though it's not compressing it anymore, it like still sounds pretty cool. And then the effects section filter is also really useful and important. Remember, this one gets applied before the main filter, so we can do cool stuff like that. Like I like this one. So yeah, I see that we're at 8:40 and I don't want to run out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the post-processing, even though we could probably tweak that sound a little bit more to make it sound closer to what we are looking for, but, you know, want to talk about some different stuff. This is, like I said earlier, a different patch that I made with the same kind of settings that we saw in the PowerPoint and in that last one. The biggest thing that's different here is that these macro knobs are mapped to the rate of this LFO and some parameters in the effects. I suppose I should talk about this real quick. If you have the distortion on and you have it in X-shaper mode, you can change either A or B to be like a perfectly flat line, and then it'll have the distortion act kind of like a gate, so that when the line is totally flat, there's no sound at all, and then when it's like it is right now, it's just normal. So that's adding to that kind of pumping sound that you hear. So I like to make instrument racks and audio effect racks of a lot of my like presets and stuff. And usually how I'll start off the post-processing is split it into two bands with just like an EQ8. So if you make a new audio effect rack and then click this button right here, it'll show the chains. And I have it split into a sub-band here, which I have completely mono. And then the like main body of the sound, I guess, which I have cutting out the sub-frequencies. This is Corpus. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. It's a Ableton default plugin. I can't actually remember if this is included with intro or standard or not, but, oh, it's not? Okay. There's other things out there like this. It's basically just a resonator, and if we turn this off, it adds some subtle space and like resonance to the sound. And of course you can change the tune that it resonates in. And when you first bring this up, it'll be like beam. It'll say beam right here, and it'll sound kind of like too resonant. So what you want to do is, usually I'll use like the membrane, plate, or pipe. Or also the tube one, and then just like bring this decay time down. And then this parameter right here is how much of the dry signal like comes through. I'm not really sure what makes that different from the dry wet, but that's just what the tooltip says. And then literally I'll just like slap another OTT on there. And then this is a pretty big part of like the dubstep or bass music sound, is like having this delay. You can use the Serum effect version, but I like to use the Ableton version because I feel like it gives me a little more control. But like, if I take that off, it loses so much body and like character, and it's not as metallic anymore. So having this like short delay between 1 and 30 milliseconds really makes it like metallic and kind of grimy sounding. And the human ear can't really tell the difference between signals that are less than 30 milliseconds apart. So like you won't really hear it as a delay until I like increase this a little bit more. And fun fact right there, that the changing delay time is actually how like flangers and phasers work. It's just like a shortcut version to have the phaser already set up for you instead of like manually changing the delay time. So now I guess I'm gonna go into just talking about some patches from different projects. And the first one that we're going to start with is this one that I called Field Guide to Birds. And I got the name because I sampled this like audio field guide for birds that was on vinyl. It's like an audiobook version of like a bird identifier book, but for some reason they put it on vinyl. I don't know how anyone would ever be able to use that, but it had some cool sounds on it, and I'm going to show you guys how you can resample pretty much anything you want to make awesome Serum patches. Yeah, so here's what the water turkey really spoke to me. That's what that sounded like on its own. So I pulled it into a, yeah, for sure. I pulled it into like an Ableton sampler. I guess we should listen to the song first. I'm actually pretty proud of this one. The last one, I was just like practicing for this.
Are these all bird sound samples?
Mm-hmm.
Did you put in Serum for this?
So anyway, I dragged that water turkey sound into a sampler, and that's what that sounds like. And I've just put some OTT on it, and the corpus and the delay. I also used this frequency shifter. I don't remember if I ended up using it in the final sound or not, but that's another good Ableton stock device that you can use for these kind of sounds.
That is also included in standard.
It is included in standard?
Shifter is.
Cool. And then what I did to make that final sound was just going to actually go ahead and duplicate this. So if you click and drag on one of these samples, you can actually pull it into Serum. And usually I'll pick one of these FFT modes that stands for Fourier Fast Transform, and that I feel like it kind of preserves the time in both dimensions like I was talking about earlier better than some of these other modes. And the number is like how many different frames it makes. So if we, sorry, that, I don't know if you guys saw that okay. If you click on this little button right here, you can actually edit the wavetable. And which is why I was saying earlier that it doesn't really matter if you have custom wavetables or not, because number one, you can just pull in your own, and number two, you can edit the ones that you already have. So these bins right here are, it's I guess just a programmery way of saying harmonics. This is the fundamental. The fourth, eighth, I don't know why they highlighted these in particular, because it's a little more confusing than you would think. Like for example, this one right here that's not even highlighted is the third harmonic. So it's like an octave and 7 semitones above, and it's like not even highlighted. But oh fuck, it can really change the sound like a lot.
Yeah.
By messing with those. Another thing that you can do here is if you go to process, you can do remove fundamental, and that'll do this for all of the frames in the wavetable, and that just removes that fundamental frequency and only leaves the textures and harmonics behind. So now if we like grab a regular sine wave, we can do FM from A this time, and we'll see how that sounds. So you can see as you scan through the amount of FM, it creates different harmonics, and you can definitely use that for your sound design by mapping either an envelope or an LFO to the FM amount, and you can do the same thing with the wavetable position. So I'm going to map this envelope 2 right here to scan through the wavetable position by just setting this all the way to 0 and turning up the amount all the way. And if we wanted to make this this wavetable A a little bit smoother, we could go to Morph under the wavetable editor and do Morph Crossfade, I think it is. Maybe we have to select all of them first. And that should make this a little bit smoother. So I hope that gave you some inspiration, and really the only difference between that one that I just showed you and the final patch is the post-processing, and I pretty much showed you how I did it earlier. The only thing that I didn't talk about was this drum bus on the end. That can be pretty cool, although it can also be kind of overwhelming if you already have your signal kind of loud. But I find that it really brings out the sub bass in these Serum patches that can kind of get lost under all of the other stuff that's going on. And then it looks like we have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to talk about Vital a little bit, because this is a little bit better time than I thought I would be making on this.
And you can take a couple minutes longer if you have to. It's like,
Okay.
None of you guys have anywhere to be, right?
no.
That's what I thought. No.
So Vital is pretty cool for like background spacey sounds. You can make all kinds of stuff with it, but in this case I'm using it for these kind of swooshy effects, and it looks a little different from Serum, but all the same parts are still here. The envelopes are up here, the LFOs are right here. Unlike Serum, Vital has 2 different filters, so you can actually have like one filter you can have the output of one filter be filtered by another, and like I said before, these are applied before the effects. So I don't know, there's definitely a lot to play around there with, and I think Vital could be a pretty cool alternative if you are just getting into like FM synthesis or VSTs in general, and you don't want to like shell out the money for Serum. I think it's probably just as good, if not better, than Serum. And then I wanted to show you guys how to make the reverse bass. This one. So this is kind of like a hard dance or like a hard style sort of reverse bass. So right off the bat, you can see here that I'm really hitting the limiter, and that's kind of a personal choice. A lot of people like the sound of analog distortion. I mean, digital distortion has its own sound too. It just is really up to like whether or not it fits into your mix or not. And then also, you know, going back to the classic gabbers, they used to get that sound by clipping their, at the time, analog mixers. So I just thought that was kind of a cool nod to like have it be like that. Of course, I could turn it down, but I think it's cool to have it be aggressive. And with this one, the biggest thing here is this LFO, which you can see is set to 1/4, and it has this big kind of hump shape. So it's mapped to a bunch of different things, like the volume of both oscillators, the cutoff and drive of the filter, the volume of the sub oscillator, how much distortion is going on, just a whole bunch of different things, all to get that like really pumping, deep kind of reverse bass sound. And honestly, this was the first time I had tried to make one of these, and it turned out better than I thought it would. And I guess all I can really say for like this type of sound is like go with your gut and like make it over the top, because it'll probably sound cool. Yes.
Yo, would you be a G and possibly post that preset to
the reverse bass?
Discord?
Yeah. Okay.
It was worth a shot.
Yeah, I can post it.
Is that
Yes.
Yeah, could you show us an example of maybe how to make like you've showed us a lot of like good examples for bass and a lot of like lower frequency like thumbs and like dubstep kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Could you show us something maybe like at a higher pitch, something like a pad or something more luscious or something like that like, because those
Totally.
are where I feel like I kind of struggle conceptually with like getting started with producing in the first place.
Yeah, totally.
Like, do you kind of see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I actually kind of struggle with that with Serum as well. I use different stuff for my pads usually, but I will show you a Serum pad that I made.
It's funny because the Yamaha DX7 is famous for ambient music and like lush pads.
Right.
Right.
Brian, used it a lot.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
I remember Apex going one or the other. Same person.
So the pad on this one is maybe the kind of thing you're talking about. It's honestly honestly pretty simple. This one is just 2 sine waves. I really wanted it to sound like the like that old. Yes, and also I wanted it to have that like old Ugly God vibe to it.
Stay away from
Like sine waves.
You can definitely, I feel like lush pads would be one of the times that you could use some of these other wavetables that Serum offers, but like you can get the job done with sine waves just fine. Some of the other ones that I like to use sometimes are this one called Disc Doot. It's like a very square wave kind of, yeah. Some of these digital and spectral ones are pretty cool. And then the other pad sound that you hear is a sample. This is a sample from Silent Hill 2. This patch here is also has kind of an ethereal vibe to it. I wanted it to be like that one Blade song, "The Flag Is Raised," and I think I kind of did it. I don't know. It's pretty like basic wavetables again. A lot of this stuff is really in like the post processing, and For this sound in particular, this little, a lot of that comes from this auto filter right here. And you can have like all these different parameters on the auto filter. Like it can pan from left to right if you have the like the phase or the offset turned up, and then you can also have the LFO change the cutoff frequency too. And even though it doesn't look like it's doing it, it is doing it. So these, as you can see, they're audio instead of MIDI, and that's because I just resampled them from MIDI. I think it was maybe, yeah, it must have been this one. This is an Ableton preset for that first one that comes in. Violent Reese. That one's pretty cool.
Oh, a preset, and what exactly was that, a wavetable?
I think it is operator, but I'm not. Oh, apparently it's simpler or sampler.
Okay.
And then this little kind of dog barking one is the Serum. Doesn't really sound right to me somehow. It's like not really. I think it's phasing a little bit. But I don't know. That one is 2 sine waves instead, or I mean saw waves instead of sine waves. And the 2 kind of phased saw waves is commonly called like a Reese bass, and you do want some of that like phasing to be going on because that's where it gets its sound from, but you have to be careful in the lower frequencies. Any questions?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll go. How do you make sure that everything's like in tune, or like at the tune you want it to be?
Do you mean like in my song or in the patch?
I guess both. Like I mean, because I often struggle with, like, for instance, if I'm sampling something that's like, I don't know what the pitch or like the key of it is, right?
Totally.
And like, how do I make sure that I'm not like doing something out of tune, and I could actually use the sample?
Yeah, it helps to like just have a keyboard nearby and like play the note that you think it sounds like and see if they're the same. You can also Ableton has this thing called Tuner. It doesn't work that well all the time.
Yeah, it does, and that's yeah.
You can also use Pro Q to see what like the fundamental is.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good method.
The fundamental is a good way to look. If you know what frequencies or what keys.
FL or Ableton? FLCD's got like a good.
Oh yeah, you guys have a pretty good EQ, like default EQ, right?
Yeah. Also, there's like a thing called
parametric.
You can, like,
Yeah, it's sciencey, man.
There's a plugin default called Wave Candy, and you can play a sample through it, and you can make it so it'll highlight the frequencies that are playing, and like the brighter it is, the more likely it is that that's the frequency being played. So if it's like a chord that's being played in the sample, I've used that before to like find out what chords are being played.
Cool.
It kind of takes like a long ass time.
Yeah.
But and a lot of guesswork.
And dedicate your life.
Yeah, I mean.
FL has some cool features that I kind of wish Ableton had sometimes.
Well, FL has a lot of features that doesn't have a lot of features that Ableton has.
The automation.
Yeah.
I kind of like FL's automation better from what I've seen. Like, Ableton's is a real mess. Like, if you open up the automation window, you can like press plus to like put different automations on different lanes, but it doesn't like automatically do it for you, and it always forgets which one the top one is for some reason. It's annoying.
What's better about Ableton is that it's recording. Like recording in Ableton.
Oh, audio, yeah.
Is much,
Any kind of audio is much better.
I like MIDI and FL though better. I just
okay.
like the way that it's arranged.
And, well, and you see how many of them that Ethan's using, but all these Ableton stock plugins are really, really good. I mean, that's one of Ableton's, like, best.
The best thing that I like about the Ableton stock plugins that they're all really low latency. So you can like put a ton of plugins on all your tracks and like have pretty much no overall latency.
There's a lot that comes in standard, and it's a pretty good way to get like started. Even intro has some good ones. But like, if you really want to get into the nitty and gritty of this, I've learned that you kind of need Sweet or Bust, because there's so many things there that I'm like just now learning that I don't have, and I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
Yes, thank you.